Welcome to Unlock Your Wellbeing, the podcast that teaches you the simple keys to health and happiness so that you can grow as a human being into a well-being. And now here's your host, author, certified wellness coach, mother and wife, Alisha Leytem. Hello everyone, welcome back to the 5th episode of Unlock Your Wellbeing with me, your host, Alisha. Can't believe we're already on episode number 5. Very cool, very exciting. Thank you all so much who have been tuning in and loving it and reaching out to me and letting me know that you're enjoying the podcast. If you haven't let me know already, I would love to hear from you and what it is that you are enjoying about the podcast. And if you feel so inclined, feel free to leave a review on iTunes or Spotify. That would be super awesome of you. So let's dive into today's content, which is going to be about what to cook without a meal plan. So here's the thing. I deeply believe, and research agrees, that the single best thing you can do to improve your nutritional intake and eat healthier is cook. Okay, so if you do nothing different in what it is that you eat except cook your own food, you are going to improve your health and your well-being. That's just what's going to happen. So I cook the majority of our food for this reason. I do enjoy cooking, but I also really enjoy knowing exactly what I'm eating and knowing how the food is being prepared. And honestly, I feel like I can cook and make my food taste a lot better than someone else or going out to eat it somewhere else, unless they're like a really good chef. But let's be honest, a lot of restaurants we go to aren't like that. So I prefer to cook my own food. The issue is there are some times that I do not meal plan. On a great week or, a great month or when I'm in my flow, what I do like to do is on Sundays, I'll stand in my kitchen. I have like a whiteboard, like that's a magnetic whiteboard thing that sticks onto my refrigerator, and I will loosely meal plan for the week. And when I do that, it is really helpful because then, when it's dinner time, I know exactly what I'm cooking and I don't really have to think about it. I have everything kind of prepared and ready to go. But life happens and I'm not able to do that every single week. So I realized that I am still able to cook for my family most nights especially and even when I don't have a meal plan. So I want to give you guys some tips of what you can do yourself when it's 5:30 and you need to get some dinner on the table and you have no idea what to cook. I think that a big reason that a lot of us feel that cooking is such a big, overwhelming thing is because we think that in order to cook, it has to be this big ordeal and we have to have every single ingredient for this thing that we have in our minds that we're going to cook. And that is exactly, what's holding you back from cooking more than, it should be. So the thing is that if you just do a few simple things as part of like your regular routine in the kitchen of like having certain things in the kitchen or in your refrigerator at all times, and then doing some of these tips I'm going to share with you, you will be able to get a lot better at whipping something up with what you have in the kitchen. Now, it's not super easy to do right away, especially when it's like brand new to you, but I promise you that you will get a lot better at it. You just have to hear some of these tips from people, and you listening to this podcast episode is one of them. Okay, so some of my tips for you. Number 1 is to always keep some kind of meat thawed in the refrigerator. So I have a drawer that is the designated meat and cheese drawer in my refrigerator. And so this is where when I go grocery shopping on the weekends or whenever I do, when I come back, I will put enough meat in that drawer that we are going to eat throughout the week. Whether I have a meal planned for it or not, I'm just planning on cooking with that. Now, because I do kind of, run my kitchen like this, I typically like to keep a lot of meats that are really easy and quick and very versatile to cook with. So things like ground chicken, ground beef, chicken thighs, that kind of thing, are honestly a lot of ground beef, a lot of ground turkey, et cetera, because it's so quick and easy to brown up. Whereas, having some things like short ribs or a pork shoulder, things like that, that takes a little bit more time and effort that you kind of want to plan for a little bit ahead of time, so that maybe you want to have like a marinade on it, or you want to put it in the crock pot early in the morning. That's not the kind of show and tips that we're giving you right now. Today we're giving you okay, I have nothing planned. I'm opening up this fridge and I want dinner on the table in 30 minutes, right? So always have some kind of meat in the fridge that's really easy and fast to cook. The other thing that I will do then is I will pull out and say, okay, what meat are we going to cook with tonight? And then I'll look and see what veggies I have on hand. So I keep all of my root veggies in the cupboard. So I'll look and see, okay, what kind of squashes do I have? What kind of potatoes, onions, that kind of thing. And then I'll look into my produce drawer and see which produce I have, which is, if you've been listening to the show, it's typically produce that is in season. So right now it's there's some carrots or some Brussels sprouts or some cauliflower, some cabbage, that sort of thing. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, let's base this meal around this veggie and this meat. Then I decide how I'm going to cook it. Okay, so it's just kind of a process, and it's not like I'm thinking this step through. It's just this is organically what happens. So once you have decided those two things you're going to do, it's then the method of cooking, right? So then I think, okay, how much time do I have? Do I want to roast this veggie in the oven? Do I want to make a one-pot skillet here on the stove? Do I want to throw it all into the Instant Pot? All three of which are pretty, simple and can be fairly fast. It just kind of depends. Sometimes I will even just start cooking, typically on the stove. I have a gas stove with my cast iron skillets because they are the least toxic skillets to cook with. So I don't use non-stick. They are not the healthiest for you. So anyway, I will get my cast iron nice and hot. So I'll turn on my gas stove, let it heat up, and then I'll just start dicing up some onion and garlic. No matter what I'm cooking, I'm always dicing up some onion and garlic. So those are some types of things that you always want to have on hand. And I'll just start cooking, and then I'll kind of figure it out as I go. I'm a really big fan of just cooking everything in one pot. So, like I said, a lot of ground meats, I'll brown up some of that with some garlic and onion, and then I'll shred up the veggie and add it to that, or I'll dice up the veggie and add it to that, or however I decide to cut that veggie up and put it into the skillet and, cook it as I go. Now, as I'm going, I decide on the flavor profile of that meal. So this really helped me a long time ago to kind of really get a handle on, okay, I'm going to cook this kind of flavor profile, so then it's really easy to just pull out and exactly which spices or other flavor items that you need for that. So for example, let's say you're going to turn that into a Mexican flavor profile. So then I would pull out all of my limes that I have in my cupboard and some chili powder and some cumin and always some salt and pepper and a little bit of oregano and maybe some cayenne, right? Like those are the typical flavor or spices for that flavor profile. Another one is Mediterranean. So with that, I'll pull out all of my lemons from the cupboard, and then I'll get out even more garlic. I'll pull out my oregano. I'll get out my olive oil. I'll see in the fridge if I have some olives in the back, right? Some like really good, delicious olives sitting in extra virgin olive oil. Maybe I'll have some green olives. Do I have feta in the fridge? Can I throw that on there, right? So just tossing basically the kitchen sink of everything that I have Mediterranean, into that flavor profile. And this works with everything because it doesn't really matter what veggie you're going to be cooking with. They really can mold to and take on the flavor that you're cooking with, right? Another one is Italians. Maybe you just want to go straight Italian for this one. So then I would pull out my Italian blend. Get out my garlic, and then with this I might even pull out a can of organic tomatoes and then add that and just toss that in to the skillet and let it kind of, cook together, and then I might top that off with some cheese, okay? Another option is an Indian palette. So with that, I would say, okay, do I have a jar of organic Indian curry that I want to add, or do I have a jar of coconut milk that I can throw in here and put in with some curry spice, and I have some ginger in the freezer, right? So I'm going to go with the Indian flavor profile, or maybe I'll serve this one pot meal with some naan bread that I have here in the freezer that takes 2 seconds to heat up in the oven, right? Now, if I'm meal planning, I will make my own naan bread with my sourdough starter. But again, we're not talking about being prepared today. We're talking about I'm not prepared and what can I do? So know and just choose your flavor profile. Again, you get a lot better at this, and it gets a lot quicker the more you cook with different flavor profiles and you're used to, what kind of goes together. So at its core, on these kind of nights, I just like to keep things as simple as possible. Like I said, I'll look at the food that I'm deciding or choosing to cook with, and then I will ask myself, what's the most simple way that I can cook this, but also the most delicious way, which is seasoning it, essentially, which are the ideas that I just gave you, okay? Now, the other thing that's really helpful with this is the beautiful, lovely Instant Pot. The Instant Pot is so helpful and so fast, and I just think once you kind of get over the fear of using it because it's new and it's a change and a different way of cooking, it's the best gadget to have in the kitchen, especially on nights that you just want to toss everything together. The other thing that I will do, you guys, is if I'm still kind of I don't know what I'm going to cook with these things, but I don't know what to cook or what to do with them, together, I will pull out my phone and I will search for it. So I will literally put into the search engine bar ground beef and carrots, and then all these ideas will come up. And this actually happened the other night. I think I had some ground Italian sausage and carrots. And I'm okay, I'm going to cook something with this. I don't know what. Couldn't think about what I wanted to do. Nothing was sounding good. So I did this. I just looked it up, or I put in, into the search engine just to get my juices going, get some ideas. And there were a bunch of recipes for a one pot dish with rice and carrots and the Italian sausage. So I'm perfect. I'm going to make this rice dish with the sausage and the carrots and the rice, And now I can cook all of this in with my bone broth that I have in the fridge, which if you guys have been listening to the podcast, you know how important it is to get your bone broth in. So it just really amped up my nutritional intake that week or that night. And my daughter absolutely loved it. So that was something that was done within 30 minutes, right? And I didn't know what I was going to cook. And that was basically my entire process from the beginning to the end. Super simple. And it gets better, it gets easier. So try that as a little trick, right? Is once you know which meat and which veggie you're going to cook with, then kind of think about maybe like a carb that you want to use. Maybe that's a rice, or you eat it over pasta, or maybe you have some sweet potatoes that you can throw into the Instant Pot and you just serve it on top of sweet potatoes. Or maybe you have some sourdough bread that you want to serve with the side. Or I do this a lot. I turn a lot of things into tacos, and we'll just brown some tortilla shells over the gas stove and kind of burn them on both sides and just fill whatever with tacos and add some avocado on top. Again, super easy, super fast, and another way to kind of like get those good carbs in. Another thing that I will do is I will cook the things in like separately of, okay, I have, carrots and I have this ground beef. I'm just going to keep using this as the example. So then maybe I will just roast the carrots in the oven, because you can roast any veggie that you have on hand, basically pretty much anything. You can roast it in the oven at high heat with olive oil and whatever seasoning profile that you're going with that night. And then you brown up and just cook the meat on its own. And then you cook up some rice, or you have a bed of greens if that's in season, or maybe you have some kale and you massage that. You put everything into a bowl. And this is kind of called a bowl. I've heard it being called like a Buddha bowl before, but really it's just a bowl of food that you throw everything together and it just works. It just works. You need to have certain things to balance it out, like your protein, your carb, your veggie. You need to have some kind of fat. It's helpful to have something crunchy like a nut on it, and then you can make like a little sauce, like a tahini sauce, which is super simple to make. Or you can just drizzle some olive oil and then a squeeze of lemon or lime that you have on top as well. Maybe you have some feta cheese. You could put that on there in place of the avocado for your fat intake, and just throw everything together. This is why I will often get some really good quality like chicken sausages, but you can just slice up and cook on the cast iron really quickly while you're roasting a veggie, and you have, maybe you're roasting Brussels sprouts on one pan and then some potatoes on the other, and you just throw it all into a bowl and top it off with some sauerkraut that you have in the fridge as well, right? So just don't be afraid to throw everything together and not try to make it this like big elaborate meal that you have to have every perfect ingredient to cook, because you don't. And so the best way to keep this simple is to make sure that you always have your staples on hand to kind of like mix and match and just get better at cooking as you go without, planning ahead of time. So some of the staples that you want to make sure you have on hand are some kind of fat to cook with. So always have some organic coconut oil or some extra virgin olive oil, some grass-fed butter, something like that, so that you can cook with. Make sure you have your spices. So like we talked about the flavor profile, make sure that you are stocked up on those spices and that you use them. Sometimes it's helpful to keep your spices out on your stove for this very reason, or use a drawer that you can pull out the drawer and you can see all your spices at once. I've noticed like if we keep them off to the side, like above the stove in a cupboard and they're all in one layer, it's hard to see what's there. And if you can't see it, you're not really using it. And then you forget that you have it, and then you're not able to remember some like cool ideas of what you can do to flavor up the food that you're cooking, right? So consider moving your spices into an easier place that you can kind of see everything right there. Again, I'm a really big fan of like the drawer that you pull out and they're all laid out there in front of you so that you can see what's there and then how much you have left of each. Make sure you always have some kind of acid on hand. So I mean vinegars and slash or your citruses, like always having some lemons on hand or limes. Lemons are really easy to stock up on and they taste good just squeezed over anything. If you want to make something taste better, just squeeze a lemon over top or a lime, done. Or if you have some really good quality vinegar, you can pour that on top with your olive oil. That's going to make your food taste so much better in no time. Like in the spring when greens are in season, this is basically what I will do for really quick meals is I will make tons and tons of salads, which as we come into the spring, I will probably be talking about this here on the podcast of like, things that I'm cooking for some ideas for you. But I will just take like a big handful of greens onto a plate. I'll drizzle it with some olive oil, a drizzle of some vinegar, and then I'll top it with meat that I had cooked in the on the cast iron, and then some raw veggies, right? So usually, let me think here, in the spring we'll have, I'll probably roast up some asparagus and just throw that on there, some green onion, just toss that on there, some mushrooms, whether I cook them or I eat them raw, just toss everything right on there and it's done in like 5 minutes. Okay, some other things you want to keep on hand in your kitchen. Always have some kind of grain or pasta. So it's important that I always have some kind of organic pasta on hand and some rice. I always like to make sure as well that I have some organic cans of beans. I do prefer to cook with dried beans, meaning I will soak them overnight in a little bit of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and then cook them in the Instant Pot the next day. But for the sake of a very quick meal, it's really fun and easy to, toss that into your pan with some ground meat and make like a little taco bowl, for example. So green pasta, cans of beans, cans of tomatoes, and again, make sure all of these are organic, super important. Make sure you also are always stocked up on onion and garlic. So when is a good deal on the onions, I will stock up on those and I'll keep a bunch of them in the cupboard, and then I'll also put some down in my my storage area where I'll keep my like root veggies down there. Always make sure I have some kind of potato, whether that's regular potato or some sweet potatoes. In the fall and winter, that is like some squashes, right? Like some spaghetti squash, acorn squash, etc., etc. So always having that on hand, because you can really cook anything in a pan and then just serve it on top of a cooked squash, and then make sure you have like it spiced and seasoned really well and it tastes really great. And then of course have some kind of cheese or avocado. I always serve whatever I'm cooking with like a little bit of avocado or some kind of cheese on top. The garnishes are really important. Some kind of raw onion. Even if you cook with onion in whatever it is you're cooking and then serve it with raw onion on top, awesome. And then the last thing you always want to make sure you have on hand too is your homemade bone broth, which if you haven't heard me talk about this before either, then go back and listen to, I believe it's episode number 2 on winter wellness tips, and that is making a bone broth every week. And for this purpose here on this episode, like a really quick meal that I would make with whatever I have on hand is some kind of soup, right? So if I have some ground meat, I'll ground that up, add in what other veggies to my soup pan and whatever spices that sound good, and pour in the bone broth and make a nice little soup, and then top it with avocado or some cheese or some raw onion or some pickled jalapeno, right? Whatever you kind of have on hand there, and you can get everything put together really quick and simply. So you guys, I hope that this gave you some ideas. I hope that it gave you some inspiration. Just know that you can seriously get really good at making 30-minute meals without having planned for it ahead of time. And also learn how to substitute for things that you have on hand. Don't feel like, oh, I'm going to make this dish tonight, but I don't have this one ingredient, so I can't make it. Unless it's absolutely imperative that you can't make that meal without that single ingredient, just leave the ingredient out, or don't be afraid to substitute for it, because your time is important. You don't need to run into town to get like one single ingredient for you to cook, that meal for the night. You can use with what you have on hand. Also, get really good at just looking into your refrigerator and seeing what you have and asking yourself what you can cook with what you have. Again, utilize Google and start searching for the things that you're planning on cooking with, and type in those 2 things together or 3 things together, and you're going to be amazed at the ideas that can come to you, and just start cooking, right? Also, the more that you cook, the better you're going to get at just kind of improvising and making it as you go. Like as you're cooking, you're going to be like, oh, I should service this with the tortilla shells I have down here. Or, oh, I think I have this in the fridge that I can add here. That would be great for this meal, right? You will get so much better at it. And honestly, it's the fastest way to get any kind of food in front of you and on the dinner table, especially when you don't know what to cook and you haven't meal planned anything. It's so much faster than saying, oh, I don't know what to cook, let's order something in. You can have something on the table that's so much more nutritious and healthier for you than it would be before, you ordered something in and it came to you, or than you decided where you're going to go out to eat, because it's probably going to take you at least 30 minutes to decide where to go, right? So I'd love to hear which of these were your favorite tips today, you guys. I will put in the show notes my favorite like kitchen tools that I talked about today. Like I'll definitely put in the Instant Pot that I talk about all the time, and some of my favorite spices and things like that to give you some ideas. Oh, you know what? I'm also going to share with you 2 websites that I get some really great meal ideas from all of the time before we go. So one is called PaleoMG. So that's PaleoMG.com. She has some really great fast dinner ideas. I don't consider myself paleo. I actually just don't label myself at all in terms of my diet, but so don't let that, disturb you or like shy you away from her really, really great recipe ideas that are simple food and generally quick overall. So I refer to her website a lot. And then the other website is called HowSweetEats.com. That's HowSweetEats.com. She also has some really, really great recipes and ideas. And again, I will just type in, like, let's say I have a spaghetti squash that I want to cook. I'll type in spaghetti squash into her site and see, what she's cooked with it, and then I'll improvise or, get a good idea from there. She has some really, really great recipes on her site as well. So I hope that this gave you guys some value. Be sure to let me know if you have a question for the show that you would like to be featured on our segment called Ask Alisha. Be sure to head to the description notes below and you can submit your question anonymously, or even like a podcast topic that you want me to touch on for you. Be sure to do that. If you have not already signed up for our book launch list, make sure to go to AlishaLeytem.com and sign up to be notified of when our upcoming book, The 6 Gold Keys to Wellbeing, is going to be released and available on Amazon for you very soon. We have a date that I will be sharing with you as it gets closer to when that is going to be released. We are working so hard on the book behind the scenes, you guys. I'm so excited to birth it out into the world. And if you would ever want to partner together with me as your wellness coach, especially for your corporate team or even you with one-on-one, please head to my website, AlishaLeytem.com, to see all of the awesome ways that we can work together to help you become a healthier and happier person for your family, for your coworkers, and for everyone around you. We need you to be healthier and happier. So thank you guys for joining me today. I will see you next week for Unlock Your Wellbeing. And I hope you have an amazing, amazing rest of your day. Bye.